Hello and welcome everyone, Lionhearted here, and today we're taking a look at the Total War Warhammer campaign map. Creative Assembly have sent me over some B-roll, and we're going to mix that in with some screenshots from their own campaign map gameplay video, which you can find linked down in the description, and some other little bits of footage here and there to give you my thoughts and impressions of the campaign map gameplay. I was able to go up to CA a couple of weeks ago and take a look at pretty much the same flyby walkthrough that's shown in Creative Assembly's video. Again, it's down in the description. So I'll kind of be sharing my thoughts and impressions I've had for a little while now, but combining them all in this video for you. So just seeing some clips of the flyby, then we're going to go through and kind of see some of the key features that I think are worth mentioning from the campaign gameplay that CA have highlighted and that we can see for ourselves through screenshots and footage. So I wanted to start off with this screenshot first, and some of you might be thinking, oh, Lionheart, yeah, really nice screenshot there. You've got the Dwarven Karak and a Greenskin war boss attacking it. It would seem cool. Are we going to find out about some features about sieges and things like that? No! Not at all. While I've got to admit, the Karak does look awesome. You've got some faces and Dwarven helms carved into the rock there. No. We'll come back to that later. Let's look over to the left. And as we zoom in, I think you guys can see what I'm talking about. It's a dragon! Dragons are cool. Fantasy 101, dragons are awesome. I think even if fantasy really isn't your kind of thing, surely you can appreciate dragons are pretty awesome. Give me a hell yeah or hell no on dragons in the comment section. But anyway, I believe by the banner at the top there's a skull with wings. It's a vampire count dragon. By the looks of things, obviously I am complete Warhammer noob here. I am learning as I go and having many of you send me lots of links day in, day out, which is helping improve my knowledge of the Warhammer lore, and I'm doing research along the way. But yeah, it looks like we've got a pretty cool dragon. I don't know if they specifically have undead dragons or what, but yeah, it's a dragon. Dragons are awesome. Dragons are cool. I like myself a dragon, so that's cool. Next screenshot, we have a vampire count, and again, they've got that similar banner at the top, so I'm pretty sort of, I feel safe thinking that dragon we saw belonged to a vampire count. But as we can see here, the vampire count is spreading its corruption. And apparently there's two types of corruption in Warhammer. You'll face chaos corruption, which is, I would assume, pretty much a given. You would expect to find chaos corruption in Warhammer. And there is vampire corruption. I don't know if they'd call it a blight or something like that. But as you can see, the trees are all dead over here. This is over in Bretonnia, I believe. And you can see like all the lovely forests around by that little castle. Nice and green. And oh no, everything's dead. That does not look good. So I would assume there's going to be some heavy morale penalties for that. Now what I'd love to know is if that's a specific stance that the vampire count is in, or whether that's just as he moves through, that's kind of a trait that he has. He will slowly kill the earth. And if the vampire count is gone from that area for say 5 or 6 turns, then it will slowly start recovering. But if a vampire count is there or nearby, it will remain sort of dead and dying. So that looks pretty cool. So we've got the vampire count there, sitting in the waste that he's created from his corruption. So that looks awesome. There's another vampire count over to the left, and there's another one in the background there as well, looking towards Northscar. So this final screenshot is this chap, the King of Bretonnia, King Lewin the Lionhearted, or Leoncoeur. I like his name. I wonder why. He is the current King of Bretonnia. And Bretonnia, for those that don't know, what I read from the wiki and the various things that people have told me, they're very much the Arthurian knights of the Warhammer fantasy universe. A lot of similarities. They have Grail quests and companions, and they go off questing to kill creatures to earn renown and honor and things like that. So what better place to start than looking at the campaign map itself in its entirety to start with. This is a screenshot from the strategic map, which I would assume you can access very similarly to Attila's and Rome 2's by pressing tab. When you're on the campaign map, it'll bring this up. You've got overlays and filters up the top where you can see where armies are located, agents, provincial wealth, things like that. I'd assume it's very much the same. Obviously, you can't tell what all of those overlay symbols mean, but certainly have a good guess what do you think some of those include? Let me know down in the comments section. But anyway, this gives us a nice snapshot of the campaign map. We can see all the areas that we can play across in this first of 3 Warhammer games. And obviously there's an expanse of land to the east and to the south, and I'd probably wager that they'll be covered at some point in one of the other 2 Warhammer games that are going to be made following the first one. So we're going to kick things off by looking at the building browser first of all, and we were shown this down at Death Pass at Karaks, Draz and Iron Rock and Karagdron. So as you can see, they've gone for a very iconic iconography for their building symbols, and very easy to see what things are. It'll be interesting to see what the other factions' building icons and cards are like. Obviously, for the Greenskins, these symbols very much embrace the kind of Greenskin look and feel. It'll be interesting to see how the Empire's buildings, whether they go for this kind of symbolic iconography approach to their building icons, or whether they go for something more detailed. Be interesting to see how that goes. Hovering over some of the military buildings, you got to see which units would be available from them. So very nice. I think it's actually quite a nice clean-cut way of showing the buildings at a glance. With Attila's, you had to kind of go through a sub-menu and click down through what was in industry, what was in artisans, and all that, and then it spread out. I think actually having it all available in one big panel is actually easier to see, because you can compare across multiple building development plots and things like that. So I think this is probably a better approach, spreading it out in one big panel. You also get to see that your income, and there's an extort income option there. I guess if you have that unchecked, that's like tax or don't tax. You can see population surplus, growth, corruption. So as you can see, there's 2 types of corruption again identified. So it looks like you've got chaos there and vampire corruption as well. So that's pretty cool. You have to deal with both of those. We can see the war chest that the Greenskins have built up there, 51,000. So they've been busy. And along the bottom, you can see the various types or sections of building. You've got province capital, military recruitment, military support, defense, and infrastructure. So nice and easy to see what's going on with each of those. For the Greenskins, their technology is shown through their Goblin workshop, and again, this is many turns into a campaign with the Greenskins, so they've unlocked a fair few of their technologies before, and CA mentioned in their own video that technologies for the different races and factions will be quite different. Some will have primarily a military focus, which the Greenskins seem to do, because they don't really, it wouldn't seem like their mentality, and as a faction themselves, as a race, they're too bothered about improving the water wheel or something like that. They just want better weapons, bigger wheels, and better arrowheads for their weapons. They want to improve their weapons and do more damage and keep the momentum and fighting going. So that's what they're looking to develop with these. Whereas they said with the Empire, you'll have far more of a balance between civic and military research options. So that's pretty cool. You can also see that there's various units are kind of sectioned off until you've researched the necessary technology. The Ragnarok Spider, improved siege engines, and Goblin Doom Divers. Both are of those. Ragnarok Spider and Doom Divers are kind of, you need to research that technology. So that, I guess that will help stagger the tiers of monstrous creatures that you come up against until they've been researched. But again, a nice simple approach to the research and tech tree there, and again, it kind of makes sense that you're not going to see too much civic research with the Greenskins. It's all going to be military focused. I'd love to again see a comparison between this and say the Empire, but we'll have to wait for a later date. But it seems pretty accessible. You can see what comes off what technology. It'd be interesting to see if that's ever expanded in future titles and you have more technology to go through or what have you. Skill trees are expanded further than any Total War game before for your legendary lords, and again, I guess to a similar extent for lords, for your agents. And apparently you have 30 levels of skills that you can invest your skill points in. You can also invest your skill points along the top row of options on this screenshot, which are the Legendary Lord's personal quest chains. And they're unique to each Legendary Lord, and they'll give you unique gear and mounts from them if you invest in them. And in the video, see I actually invest in the Skullmuncha skill there, which gives you a new mount for Azag the Slaughterer and puts him on a wyvern, which we'll show in a moment. But again, it looks like you've got a very detailed, expansive skills tree, and I guess that makes perfect sense for Warhammer. A lot of this is, a lot of role-playing elements coming into Total War with Warhammer, which is something I wanted to see. Really wanted to see Warhammer take Total War series in a far more kind of personal direction, and I'm hoping that with you investing in all these skills, you really will become attached to your generals and your characters, because you've leveled your guy up to like level 20 or whatever, and you don't want him to die because you've invested a lot of time into him and you've upgraded loads of his skills. Obviously, there is no family tree in this because there is no sense of time in this game. There are just turns. So you don't have that interaction, which is what helped, at least for me, make characters and generals in Attila allow me to get more attached to them again and allow me to roleplay a little bit more. But I mean, if you've got this very expansive skill tree, it does look promising to really absorb you in and make you care about your generals, your agents, your units a lot more. So again, we talked about Skullmuncha, and here he is, Azag on Skullmuncha there, his big wyvern, and in CA's video they moved him down to attack a dwarven army, and it looks like they're gonna get wrecked. Again, Skullmuncha looks very nice, big old wyvern. Can't wait to see them in battle. Can't wait to use one and see how they'll work, because so far we haven't had too much focus on aerial combat. It was briefly touched on in the Battle of Blackfire Pass video, but CA didn't kind of stay too long. Then they actually said, I think, that it was still being worked on and tweaked quite a bit. The aerial combat aspects of Total War Warhammer. So it'll be interesting to see how that functions and how that works when we get hands on and we can see some preview stuff of those. So let's look at some of the battle specific features that you'll be accessing from the campaign map, such as banners and some of the gear that you'll have access to through campaigning with your generals and picking it up as loot and what have you. So we're looking at a Greenskin, an Orc war boss who is besieging Karaks Kadrim. He's level 11 and he's got 2 bits of gear: Armour of Gork, which gives him extra armour, charge bonus and health, and Battle Axe of the Last Waaagh, which gives him weapon damage. You can see he's got quite a fearsome army. He's got some catapults in there, some trolls, so he's got some black orcs in there as well. Orc Biggins, Orc Boys, Goblin Knight Archers, I think. Knight Goblin Archers, something like that. So we can see the siege equipment already available, but he's got those catapults, so you wouldn't need to wait for that anyway. And then we have banners. We've got Banner of Rage and Mork's War Banner, which gives specific units that you can drag and drop them onto those bonuses. And you can do that once per battle, and he's attached to those black orcs. And now he's going in for an Autoresolve. It comes up saying Decisive Victory. And you get to see the stat screen, the amount of loot. All kind of flies up in your face, shows the experience gained for your general, the rank. Also, you see that the little fightiness gauge to the left-hand side, that green gauge by your general, increases, and we'll talk about fightiness next. And then we get the options for capturing the settlement. So you have Occupy, you have Loot and Occupy, you have Sack, and you have Raise. And obviously all those carry various advantages or disadvantages, or more loot or less loot, depending on which one you go for. And as you can see, when that Greenskin war boss won that battle, won that siege at that Dwarven Karak, it's now been transformed physically to show that the Greenskins are in control of that Karak. You've got orc faces and skulls and horns and new stakes and spikes being placed everywhere. It's been orcified, it's been greenskinified to show that they're now in control, and I hope that also translates onto the battle map. I would assume so, because we saw that sort of thing on the Ambush at the Thundering Falls battle map. But yeah, I really like that dynamic change, showing who's in control, especially when the Greenskins capture it and then turn it into one of their camps. So let's take a look at Fightiness now with Grom Bogroth, who's standing next to the Pillar of Bone in this screenshot near the Marshes of Madness. The Pillar of Bone itself will actually cause the winds of magic in this area to be rather tempestuous. You should have also seen little sparkles of kind of multicoloured flurries. They're sort of winds of magic, little flurries there, whizzing around the campaign map, and obviously that will affect the amount of mana you have if you're fighting in an area near one of those itself. But Fightiness, as we can see, Grom, for whatever reason, hasn't been engaged in combat for that long, and the Greenskins live for kind of constantly being engaged in war, fighting their Waaghs, and keeping the boys busy. For whatever reason, Grom hasn't been doing this. His men look pretty low. I don't know if they've been taking attrition or not, but his Fightiness is low, and he needs to sort that out, because in 6 turns it says his army will rebel. And that won't be very good for him. So how do you combat low Fightiness? Essentially think of this as kind of a reworked integrity mechanic for the Greenskins. And as Al Bickham, the communications manager for Creative Assembly, mentions in CA's own video, the best way to solve this is by putting him into a stance. Putting him into the Raiden camp stance, which improves Fightiness over time, and it makes it higher. It also earns them income and replenishment, plus it allows them access to a global recruitment pool, so it means that you can go deep within an enemy territory and still recruit units. They will cost more and they will take longer to be recruited, because obviously you're behind enemy lines, as it were, but it does mean that you can launch rather, adventurous campaigns, as far as you're willing to push your armies. I just want to take a look at the tunneling stance, and it's something that we've heard of before through the dwarves and various interviews, but we can see that Clubber Spitebacker here has got himself into a spot of bother. He's stuck between 2 dwarven armies, and normally this would be he's going to die. He's stuck between the 2 of them. He can't escape. He's taking attrition. He's screwed basically. However, with tunneling stance, he can access the old dwarven underway system, and as you can see, when he enters that stance, it radically increases his movement range, and you can actually see he can pop up the other side of this volcano, escaping away from these 2 dwarven armies. Now there is a chance that you will be intercepted, and that will then start an underground battle like the ambush at the Thundering Falls on the underway there. So that's pretty cool. There are ways to increase your evasion of interception, and I would assume there's also ways of increasing your chance of intercepting armies in tunneling stance. It'd be interesting to see how much the AI actually uses this to get out of a tight bind. If you try and trap the AI, will it know to go into this tunneling stance? It'd be interesting to see how much it either relies on it or just actually uses it. It'd be quite interesting, because that would definitely pose more of a challenge of actually trying to catch armies, especially those tricksy little goblins. And now we're going to take a look at another screenshot which shows Fightiness at the other end of the scale. So Grom was suffering from low Fightiness. Grimgor Ironhide is not suffering at all. He is celebrating, in fact. He's got so much Fightiness he can call a Waaagh. And when he goes into that upper threshold, that upper third of the Fightiness scale there, he can call a Waaagh. And this will spawn an AI-controlled force. An AI-controlled stack, which will shadow Grimgor around the map. You can give it basic sort of commands of attack this settlement. I don't know what the other ones are. I can see there's a list of 3, but the top one is the only one we can see, which is attack. And Creative Assembly got the AI Waaagh Horde to attack Arkendorf. So that's quite useful. From what I've read, though, and I'm trying to remember if they've changed their mind about this yet or not, I don't know. But the last time I remember hearing about this, battles in Total War Warhammer were only going to be 20v20. So 20 stack only. You wouldn't get that large army option, which seems like a shame. I don't know if that's because they're expecting for units, for the most part, to be larger than previous Total War games, so that you'd be fighting larger scale battles anyway. It will be interesting to see if they add that option in, considering we've had it in previous ones. I personally, if you want that kind of epic scale, I think that the way they've got it currently in Attila with, you know, large army battles and things like that, 40 versus 40, I think that's a very good way of doing it. But we will have to wait and see. But yeah, so you have the Waaagh army, and that Waaagh army will stay with you as long as it survives, or until your fightiness drops below that upper third in the fightiness scale there, in the fightiness gauge. So you need to keep your fightiness high, which you can do by, you know, constantly fighting, winning battles. And I don't know if, well, obviously putting yourself into raiding stance, or raiding camp, rather, when you need to. Next to Grimgor Ironhide, we've actually got an Orc Shaman who is gyrating around like crazy, doing something called Magical Interference, which sucks the winds of magic out of that area, which will lower the available mana pool for enemies fighting in that area. So that's a good way of negating, if you're coming up against an Empire army or something like that, as the Greenskins, and you can see they've got lots of wizards and things like that, and you may want to nerf them a little bit by weakening their magical capacity. Should mention, obviously, you can put agents into armies, but unlike previous Total Wars where they added themselves on as an extra slot, so there would be kind of 21 characters along that portrait section of unit cards along the bottom, agents in Warhammer actually become units that can then fight on the battlefield, which I think is definitely a good thing. I really like that. But it will obviously mean that you won't be able to put agents into a full 20 stack. You'll have to have a 19 stack to get your agent to join in if you want them to fight on the battle map. I don't know if there's a case where you can put them into your army if you do have a full 20 stack, but you won't be able to bring them in battle, or whether you just won't be able to put them in at all, which I would assume is actually going to be the case. Unless there's space for them in your army, because they will fight on the battle map. Very quickly looking at quests, and we can see that Grimgor has moved up into Blackfire Pass in this screenshot towards a quest marker, which are highlighted via these blue markers on the campaign map. And if he moves into it, we can see the quest will reward him with Gitsnik, his mighty axe, which will give him some nice bonuses and effects there, and gives you all the details there of what he needs to do. So he needs to defeat the following army, which can be seen on the next screenshot, the Empire army that is assembled there. It's got a steam tank and various other units, but that is showing how those quests will work for your legendary lords if you go to one of those markers. So again, another role-playing element within the Total War Warhammer game here, and I'm very interested to see what kind of, you know, how diverse can these quests be, because obviously I guess they're centered around battles and things like that, but it'll be interesting to see the variety and situations that these quests throw you in. Also, these quests are one of the main ways in which you can get some unique loot and gear to further customize your characters. So we're now going to fly on from Blackfire Pass and just take in the aesthetics of the campaign map here, flying through the last little bit from Creative Assembly's own video to highlight some of the other areas of the campaign map itself. As we sweep on through, we can see Karl Franz on Deathclaw there in the distance, and a flurry of the Winds of Magic just to his left there, so that'll potentially cause your mana pool to be higher if you fight a battle in that area. So there's no denying this campaign map looks stunning. It's beautifully crafted. There's so much detail absolutely everywhere, just in the mountains, in the forest, in the landscape, the rivers, the water, the castles themselves. The character models look rather impressive as well. We can see the blight here from a vampire count, the corruption spreading through the land. Another vampire count, and then Lionhearted there, as we shoot across to Norskar, and we can see there'll be skulls crafted out of the mountains themselves, and volcanoes, and those skulls spewing lava from their mouths if they're being carved out of a volcano there, swinging on round and back down towards the mountains. So yeah, there is purely no denying this is a fantastic looking campaign map. I really, really hope that performance matches this increase in quality, this increase in stunning visual representation of the Warhammer Fantasy world, because ultimately all this content for me is almost pointless if you can't run it, if you can't appreciate it and enjoy it. So what I truly hope is that CA have made some reasonable advances in the technology that they use for their engine, that there's more optimization, that ideally there's more focus on multi-core support that will help you enjoy this environment. I mean, ultimately you're still going to need a high-end rig to enjoy the game at, you know, maximum settings. There's no doubt about that. But I hope that scaling-wise, they've put in the time and development to increase performance where possible. I read an article a while back that stated that one of the developers had said that they'd found a way to increase unit sizes without any negative impact on performance, and I've mentioned time and time again that I believe that is DirectX 12 implementation. Now, DirectX 12 isn't the be-all and end-all, and it won't, you know, just instantly solve performance problems for Total War, but I do believe that it will help in some part, and I do believe that DirectX 12 is potentially the technology that developer hinted at by suggesting they could increase unit size without any negative impact on performance, because that forces the processor to actually use the GPU to do some of its processing that it would normally do, so it offloads some of the work that it will have to do to the GPU, which for some games isn't utilized enough, and especially with a heavily CPU intensive game like Total War. I hope that that's the case, because it does seem like it will offer some benefit. I don't know how much. Again, a lot of this is lots of ifs and buts and maybes until I can get hands on and test it out on my own PC, on my own system, and put it through its paces and see what the performance is like. I just have to guess, but that's truly what I hope we'll see from Warhammer. You know, a reasonable performance increase to go along with all these fantastic looking visuals and changes that they've made along the way. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. I'm sure I've missed out some things, so feel free to discuss and comment about them down in the comment section. I'll be looking to dive in where I can. So, as always, thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook and Twitter. Take pride in joining the Legion. Check out my affiliates and sponsors, XMG, Greenman Gaming and GT Omega Racing. Until next time, ciao for now.